You are listening to the Red Roots podcast.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I had a false start. I was gonna say it, then the music wasn't done enough, I guess. So I was like, everybody doing well?
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything good? Happy election day for the U.S. people here.
Yep.
That's not Simon, basically.
I voted already like weeks ago.
Yeah, that's been the good thing this year. There's been a huge early turnout. Like I think in the state of Texas, more people voted early this year than the total amount voted in 2016, which is, a good thing. I think because there was a horrible representation. Yeah, I don't know. But like horrible representation in 2016. It was a very, very low turnout. And I think, it's a good thing. People vote and Americans can get what they want. You know what I mean? Because I think it's always unsettling to me when like there's a very low turnout and somebody wins just because no one cared who won. Yeah. You know what I mean? But then you have to deal with the consequences of that for 4 years. Yeah. But then when like millions and millions and millions of Americans turn out, I don't know how many potential voters there are.
Highest for a century, apparently.
Yeah.
Highest turnout for a century
already, and that's not even good. But I think that's the way it should be. Yeah, I do. Some people disagree with this, but I do understand why people don't vote because it's like. I don't know. There's a lot of different circumstances and points of view that I do get. However, I do like when a lot of people vote, and then that's my thing. Is I know everyone's not going to vote, and that's fine. But I think I like when a lot of people vote, and then like you really get what America want. Well, electoral college, so majority of anyway. That's a whole different thing. But yeah, I mean more than kind of like make your voices heard type thing and. Because if like 10 people vote in the United States and somebody wins the presidency, I just feel like it's illegitimate because America didn't vote. You know what I mean? So I think it's important for Americans to vote or whatever. So you know what I'm saying? To like for a lot of people to turn out and stuff like that, and to really see what does America really want. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I feel like this election is a little different from last election because last election no one wanted any of them to win. I feel like everyone was just like, man, why were we given these two options, these two candidates? And this time, people definitely know who they want to win,
Yeah, or lose. It's about winning. This election's about Trump. Either you want Trump to win or you want Trump to lose. That's what it's really about. It's, I don't know. It's just a mess. Like, it just turned into a mess. I saw a thing where there's a senator who I respected from Florida, and he was basically saying something about it's a good job. Like they're doing these campaigns, these parades or whatever, where they all drive together on different interstates. That's fine. But they saw a bus of the opponent, and they tried to allegedly try to run the bus off the road, and like it's literally gangs. Yeah. But these are the same people who are like, want to throw all the gang. You know what I mean? Like if anyone else did that for any other reason, they would want to throw them under the prison. And so it's just gone too far. Like, it's just gone too, like, this is just, and we've given politicians way too much power as well. They are public servants. And so it's our job to demand excellence from them and to demand what we want. It's not our job to just vote them in and do whatever they say for any candidate. That's not the way it's supposed to work, but that's what it's become. And so the United States has, I saw someone else say that, the United States, if something happens, if such and such wins, then the United States won't be number one in the world. And I was just like, the United States isn't number one in the world in anything right now, except for military spending, maybe. But other education, not number one. Like, you know what I mean? There's like, we're just not number one in anything. And so it's like that whole.
Maybe basketball.
Yeah, but according to these people, that stuff doesn't matter, according to,
And that LeBron James sucks.
I saw that. Which, like, what is it? Good thing we're tackling the real issues. Like, good grief,
Unified,
man.
Right.
It's just it's so absurd, man. Like that. We need a third party, and then the two parties that need to get back on track. And it doesn't matter if you agree with them, but it's good for everybody when there's a healthy tension between the two. Yeah. But this is just fighting.
It's hate, yeah.
Yeah, it's just hate and fighting, and no one cares about us as the people. they're just using us as the people to beat the other party.
But then you see us, the people, fighting too, because
right.
of,
Well, because right,
the
exactly. But that's
that
my point: is we
vote.
give them too much power,
Yeah.
and we're following and that's not the way. Like when they start doing that stuff, we have the ability to dismiss both of them, and like demand, like, no, we're not doing this. But we don't like. That's what I'm saying is we're not called to follow in that sense. You know what I mean? These leaders or whatever, and that's not what we're called to demand from them, and that's not what we do. And so it's just the whole thing has become inverted or perverted even in some ways. Yeah. And I don't know. It's a mess. God bless America and every place else, I suppose. And so,
every place else.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, so that's today. I know a lot of people are on edge and nervy and whatever. By the time some people listen to this, it'll probably have been over anyways. But maybe you'll listen to it this morning because we upload it right away. And if so, then hopefully we can distract you a little bit from the madness that is. And people are talking about civil war. Like some people are taking this serious. Like,
no, I saw news that major companies and chains are boarding up their storefronts
for riots and such.
For riots, yeah.
Gosh.
Sounds like Bolivia. We all started, not we, but people have started.
Yeah.
Preparing for those things too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, there's so much stuff to talk about with that, but that's not what this podcast is going to be about. So what is today's episode going to be about?
Today's episode is brought to you by...
Okay. So, Simon,
that's what happens when you give me the reins.
But you're able to talk at any point ever. And you act
it's like when you give someone like a high-vis jacket and a clipboard, suddenly they turn into a different person.
Exactly. Give me a little bit of power. I will take it.
It's not even like you're part of the podcast. You've been on here for a year.
No. So, okay. I have a question that I wanted all of us to discuss that I feel like it's a good question, right? So as missionaries, as believers, we are called to make disciples. That is just a commandment. That's us being obedient to God. Make disciples. So what does that look like? So you get saved. How long do you wait before you make that a priority, like put that into action? Okay, I'm saved. Now I have to start making disciples. Is there like a time period? And how do you go about doing that?
Oh, okay. So are we talking about in terms of missions or just in general?
I would say in terms of missions, because this is a missions podcast.
You say if you just get saved.
Well, never mind. Well, then maybe we could just discuss that later.
Okay. Or
because it is a good question.
Or you mean, what are your expectations for the people that you disciple? At what point do you expect them to start making disciples? Because you can't say that you do discipleship if you just disciple 5 people and that's just what you do for the next 20 years and there's no multiplication there.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about it all. I didn't think about that much.
Okay. Well, we're a team, so. All right, Simon?
Yeah, I guess first thing when you're arriving on the mission field, I think it's difficult because naturally you've gone onto the mission field with the mandate of making disciples. And then you get there and you don't know anyone, you don't really speak the language, you don't know where you fit in yet. So I think naturally it takes a while before even that might even cross your head of like, okay. And then you've got to try and work out, okay, do I sit down? Do we sit down in a meeting and go, okay, Ramon, you're going to disciple so-and-so, Melinda, you're going to disciple so-and-so, Simon, you're going to disciple so-and-so, or do you let it happen naturally?
Yeah.
I think they're the two options that you have to consider is like, okay, do you try and plan discipleship or do you try and make it happen naturally? I've seen both work. I've seen both fail. So I don't know if there is a right or wrong answer. I don't know if you have a preference. Can
you talk about when you've seen it work when it was planned? Because I don't know that I've ever seen like a mutual agreement come and say, hey, you're going to disciple me. Hey, would you disciple me? Like, how does that conversation begin and then develop?
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I've seen it like in terms of churches where you've got youth leaders and then young people, and they kind of like, I don't want to call it online dating because that's a weird analogy. It's a weird analogy, but it's kind of like you fill in a survey. Like the young person will fill in like a questionnaire, and then the youth leader will fill in like a questionnaire, and they'll basically match them up and say, okay, these people have stuff in common, so they seem like they would generally click. So they'll go together, and then you have like a 2-week kind of like trial period, I guess. And then if at the end of it you ask the young person like, are you happy? this person, with the leader, and you know, like, ask the leader, like, are you happy with the relationship with the
So
young
it's like
person?
a big brother, big sister program,
yeah.
big brother, little brothers program. So it's all intentional. Both parties go into this saying, I want to be connected with someone. Okay. Yeah. I've never had that at a church, at my churches. So interesting. Okay. You said you've seen those work before?
Yeah, you see them work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Yeah, I mean, it completely depends on the relationship that gets built between the two, the leader as well, like how committed they are to it. Because I think sometimes people sign up for things like, oh yeah, I'll help disciple someone, and then realize it's a longer commitment than just a month. And so after a month, they start going, oh, I don't have time anymore. Yeah. Or they start off meeting like 6 times a week and then realize that actually that is really unsustainable. So let's drop it down to 4, and then it gets dropped even further and further, and then a disconnect happens as well. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, sometimes they absolutely take off, you know, and they become best of friends, and it really does work.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say something.
No. I mean, at some point, I'm going to say something.
I always found it awkward, like if I wanted someone to disciple me, like to just go ahead and ask them, you know. It's like that. It's like wanting to ask someone, again, back to the dating thing, like, hey, would you be my boyfriend? No. You always think that you're going to get rejected.
Well, yeah. What? No, I'm just saying, like, that is what it is. Like, well,
yeah.
No.
And I think that's a pro between, like, if you find out who's interested in being discipled and you find out which leaders are interested in discipling someone, then you've already naturally, like, broken down that awkward barrier of, okay, look, we're all here.
Yeah, for this.
Yeah, this is why we're all here. Well, so no one's going to get rejected or left behind. So
yeah. I think with informal, the other one you're talking about, like the more informal, like just letting it happen. It can happen, but I think the person has to be like the leader or whatever has to be intentional about it, because it doesn't. Like we've seen that a million times, right? It's like, oh, you just have people around forever. And but we never really intentionally talk about Jesus and stuff like that. That's something that we've been confronting in our church. It's just having people around forever and never having any intention of like sharing hope with them. It's not even about indoctrinating them. That's the way that people see it, but it's not that. It's about like, man, like if you have this hope, like this eternal hope, why are you not sharing it with people? Like, you know what I mean? What's the point? What are you doing? And so you just have these people that just hang out together and no one ever grows for 10 years. And so it's like, okay, well, that's not discipleship. So like it can just happen in a healthy church, in a healthy group or a healthy setting, but it won't just happen if those things aren't healthy, or if you don't have the culture of discipleship and unashamedness or whatever the word is of like talking about and sharing the gospel, and not even like, hey, sit down, let me talk to you about Jesus. Not even that, like. Yeah. But like just definitely growing in that, because it's like a natural. There is a natural flow to it, and it should be natural for those of us who are supposedly mature believers, like, because that's something that's just part of our everyday language. We don't look for opportunities to not talk about Jesus. You know what I mean? Well, and we don't even have to look for opportunities to talk about Jesus. That's just a major part of who we are. It's central to who we are. So it overflows from whatever. And that's something that we've seen in our church, is people that look for opportunities to not talk about Jesus. And it's like, wait a minute, well, what are you then? But then on the other side of it, you have people that they feel that pressure, and it's not that either. Like, it's like, okay, this is who we are. We are believers. And if this is not if this is not who you are, if this is not something that oozes, like if the grace of God is not something that's big enough that it seeps from your pores, then you haven't experienced the grace of God. And there's a fine line there. It's because it seems like I'm saying you have to go out and feel pressured, but that's not the thing. You shouldn't feel pressured. It should be a part of your everyday living. And so, I don't know. It can definitely work both ways. But then it's like, too, what is the goal of discipleship? Is, you can say maturity in the faith, but what does maturity in the faith look like? It looks like loving, basically people that don't look like you. And then we can define love, all this other stuff. But loving is sharing the gospel. It's forgiving and whatever. And it's building this community that they shall know you by your love for one another, right? And so that's what Christian maturity looks like, is loving people that don't look like you. So like I even get the perspective of the matchmaker perspective, but even to a point of that has to be like, you know what I mean? It has to come off of like the people that we're compatible with, because that's what the gospel is really loving your neighbors about, is loving people that aren't like me. And so I totally get. I'm even in agreement with it. Of like, hey, let's find somebody that maybe you can, find some common stuff in. But then, I'm not even criticizing because I don't know in this situation. But we have to get to a place to where we not even provide opportunities, but we encourage and push people to not just seek out connecting with people that look like us, but look. And this is what we talked about in church a few weeks ago, right? People seek out community that our common thread is Jesus, because, and again, like we talked about, if we build this based on things that we have in common, then it's going to exclude people that don't have those things in common with us. You know what I mean? And the gospel's not exclusive in that way. It's inclusive in Jesus, so that there's no room for holiness is important, but inclusivity, healing inclusivity, I think N.T. Wright puts it that way. But it's, it has a goal or whatever of Jesus and redemption and whatever, but definitely accepting of people from all different walks and preferences and colors and ethnicities and jobs and, what is it called? Tax brackets, I guess is the best way you can say, whatever, And so it's a complex. I think we make it way more complex than what it is.
Yeah, I think about like Jesus. He didn't choose any disciples that were qualified, right?
Yeah, they weren't.
Quote,
none of them
unquote.
were like him.
And he was just very direct, like, "Hey, follow me. I'm going to make you a fish of men." And then it began, the journey, and then it ended. Did it end after he died and they continued on, or were they discipling people while they were being discipled?
Yeah, well, they had a community. So there's 70-some people around Jesus at this, they had big events, but I think peak Jesus' crowd is 70-some people, right? Because then they send them out and all this other stuff, 70 to 100 people, we can say that are just around. And so, yes, Jesus is teaching them, but you got to understand that they're having conversations amongst themselves and stuff too, and they're growing, and they're not just bottom feeding Jesus, you know what I mean? At this point, they're growing in their faith, yes, but Jesus does have expectations for them to so that's why he gets mad when he's praying in the garden and they're sleeping. So he has expectations for them of spiritual maturity to do these practices and stuff. So, and you got to believe that in that 70, 100, whatever people, that they are praying for one another, growing and giving one another. Well, remember when Jesus said the other day, this, and this? Well, the Old Testament said, so that is happening and within that community. And so I think that informally, because it's a healthy community, that this discipleship is already happening. Mm-hmm. But then he says, he gives this, this mandate, hey, I'm headed out, guys, but, go and make disciples of all nations. Because now it's mostly a Jewish movement, right? And you see a few Gentile things here and there, but it's mostly a Jewish nation. So he's expand this, blow this up of all nations and teach them what I've taught you. So he's giving the mandate of discipleship because I think, and this is just me thinking in a moment, so I could be completely off and heretical or something, but I think in the, it would have been easy for them to stay in their community and just be oh, Jewish people, yeah. Jesus, we follow you, and definitely follow Jesus. But Jesus is no, expand this, and I want you to be intentional about teaching, because it's easy to disciple within the church. But now he's sending to people all these people that have been raised like you, that believe like you, they've memorized the same scriptures as you, they celebrate the same holidays, but now he's sending them out to cultures who have different gods, who pagan stuff, and they, different cultures, different languages, and all this other stuff. And he's that's what the day of Pentecost is about. It's the gospel going out in every language. That's when they're speaking in tongues. Everybody hears the gospel in their language. So that it's not even about the miracle of tongues as much as it is the gospel going out in everyone's language, and they're hearing the gospel, and it's spreading this and promoting discipleship essentially to the nations. Yeah. And so that's what, so Jesus is now sending them out on this mission, this intentional mission of being intentional about and consciously making disciples, because it's been comfortable. We say comfortable, but I'm reading it in my head for some reason. It's comfortable. Comfortable. They've been comfortable until now, somewhat, because they're under Jesus. Jesus is there, and oh yeah, and he, he's super wise, and he's witty, and he's intelligent, and he's perceptive and he's discerning, and so he knows like what to respond to people when they're asking. The Pharisees are asking him questions they don't have the answer to. Jesus chimes in with the story and whatever. So they've been somewhat insulated and protected, which is what the beginning stages of discipleship looks like for a while, because you have the leader who is doing that for them. But now he's at the point like, okay, you guys, it's time to, like, you've been growing. And you've grown to the point to where you're not going to stop growing, but that's why community is important. You're going to continue being discipled, but now you need to branch out and make this thing blow up. And so I've discipled 12 of you intentionally and deeply, but then even on a greater scale, there's been, a few hundred or whatever affected on a deeper level, not as deep as disciples, but like on a deeper level than the other 5,000 or whatever, that they fed and all that. And so like, I want you guys to take this and I want you to just blow this up. Like, this is what, and so he's like, I'm going to send my Holy Spirit, and I'm going to send that to you to empower you to be able to do, and so they go from that perspective. So I think, like, I don't know, I forgot what your question was, but
the process, something. What is like the
process? No, you asked something else just a second ago, and I was responding to it. But anyways, yeah, well, that took me here. And so, but yeah, no, I think it's important. Well, first, I think it's important to understand how that all works and comes together, and like how, what it's about. And it's not like, because that's what you asked. You asked were they discipling after, did they just start discipling after Jesus sent them or before? Yeah. And I think maybe as like taking the lead probably after, but they were doing it without realizing it that before, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They were part of this discipleship community or whatever without realizing it. And that's the thing too, is discipleship a lot of times starts without the other person even knowing it. Like sometimes, yeah, it's definitely like, oh, okay, we're here to match us up with disciplers and disciplees or whatever, and which is completely fine. But then other times, you're building a relationship and the person doesn't realize until they're a mature believer, oh yeah, he discipled me for the past 5 years. Yeah. Like, and a lot of times discipleship comes before conversion. It's like Jesus says, follow me. He doesn't say repeat after me. Mm-hmm. Like he says, follow me, blah, blah, blah. Or what does he say we talked about on Sunday? To Matthew. I think he says, follow me. That's all he says, or something like that. And Matthew drops everything. And so they understood what Jesus was saying. So like when I was a kid, somebody taught me that like they just miraculously followed, but they knew like that he's a teacher, and they like in the culture, like that was the thing. You wanted to be picked. But it was kind of late for some of these guys to be picked, which is the cool thing, is like they're not necessarily qualified, like you said, in various ways, but Jesus is saying, follow me.
I know, I remember hearing that as a teenager, and I'm just like, stranger danger, stranger danger. It's like some random man comes up to, because they don't teach you that people want to be chosen to be, discipled or like mentored, or, because that's what they did with the priest, right? Mm-hmm. Like the priest chose someone.
Yeah. Well, the culture's centered around, like you can understand, it's a theocratic, it's centered around like God and the temple and the like cleanliness, you know what I mean, and doing these rituals and stuff. And so that was the apex of society. Is like when you're a kid, that was playing in the NBA. Is you get picked by a rabbi or whatever to be discipled by them. And so it's like, you have these guys. So you have Matthew, who's a tax collector. He's just said screw it. Like he's like he's like sold out, you know what I mean, to his own, like to the Romans, against his own people, like collecting taxes on behalf of the Romans and all this stuff. He's a bad guy. Like everyone would hate this guy. Mm-hmm. And so he's completely like just said forget it. Like he's given up. But then Jesus comes and he's giving him a second chance at not just definitely from sin and all that stuff and redemption, but equally on a cultural level of a person that is unusable, and not even only unusable, this person is unsavable. So he's unsavable, and Jesus is now welcoming, as we know now, which is salvation, but equally qualifying this guy who was essentially the devil to the Jewish people, and making him to be a leader of the new, like of this new movement of discipleship and stuff. And so it's very radical what's happening. And so yeah, definitely when like he goes to a fisherman and is like, follow me. Oh heck yeah! Like I thought 10 years ago or whatever. I don't know how old they were or whatever. You may know that, but like their time had passed and they weren't going to get picked. Yeah. Like no one's going to pick those guys. You know what I mean? They just weren't. Their families weren't fortunate. They didn't have. They probably weren't the greatest students and stuff when they were younger. And cause that's what they studied. That's how they learned how to read. Is they read the law and all that stuff. Like it wasn't like they're like doing like reading like Huck Finn and stuff like that. Like you know what I mean? Like that was their whole system was based on this, and so they go that way, and Jesus comes and he calls them, and so it's already a radical calling to discipleship, and he's really turned the whole thing on his head of making these guys or qualifying these guys to be disciple makers of this new community that he's starting. And so then it sends us on the path of discipleship.
I mean, no wonder he was considered a rebel, right? You're not doing things correctly. They're too old.
Yeah. He's just counterculture. Like he's just, and he's not really counterculture. He's counter our culture. Right. But he's like, he's definitely like a kingdom cultural. Like, you know what I mean? Like that is what it is. And he's basically rectifying things that we have either misinterpreted or abused or taken the wrong way. And that's all he's doing. He's not doing it just to be a rebel. Or to be a rebel at all. I don't think he's doing it because it's right. And this is because God wants to be glorified in this way. And so, and he's proven a point too, right? Like he's not picking the top students and whatever. Like it's like when God picks Gideon, it says he's the lowest man of the lowest tribe. Like Gideon's a loser. But God uses him and turns him into this like great conqueror and like great, tremendous leader, And so God is doing the same thing with his disciples. These disciples, as he's taking these people, some were just run-of-the-mill, like nobodies, is what the culture would have seen them as. They're not bad. Yeah, they fish, good guy, whatever. But like he's not,
They're not the first pick.
Yeah, they're not first, second, third pick. Like by no means are they that. Not on the list. But then you even have people that are hated, and that you just have these extremes. And we talked about Simon, not this Simon, but Simon. This not the what's his name? Simon the. Wait, I'm messing this up. I had to think Matthew, and who we talk about in church the other day?
Levi? No,
that's Matthew. And Matthew, it's Simon? I'm thinking Simon the sorcerer, but it's obviously not him. He's in Acts. It's the disciple.
Simon the Zealot?
The Zealot. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Simon the Zealot, who is overzealous nut job. He's killing people for the quote unquote the kingdom of God. Like, you know what I mean? They carry daggers around and they would stab people if they saw him going against the law. And like, so like this is what we talked about in church. He would have stabbed Matthew. Like he would have easily would have killed Matthew because he's going against, so they're defenders of, this Jewish culture and the godly stuff. And so he's a zealot. He's overkill. And like, but Jesus is calling him to be a disciple as well. And then he has these other guys, this very strange, like group of diverse figures from different classes and different backgrounds and stuff like that. And I think in the long run, that's what our discipleship should look like. I mean, that's what it has to look like, and that's how, because you got to think about it. So you look at Matthew. Okay, we've used that example a bunch, so we'll stay there. What's the first thing Matthew does when Jesus calls him? Is he goes and he invites other tax collectors, and they have a party, and Jesus is there, and Jesus is partying with the tax collectors, but he's teaching them as well. And he refers to himself as a doctor, and who needs a doctor, the sick or the well? And so who can reach tax collectors better than a tax collector? Who can reach fishermen better than a fisherman? So on and so forth, right? And so that's the importance of diversity in church, is because you have these different people groups. And like Jesus, that's the point of the gospel, is I want to reach all these in every, on every level of society. I don't really believe there's levels, but in general, society does. So on every level of every place of society. So like, I want to reach homeless people, and Jesus could resonate with homeless people because he didn't live anywhere. He says that birds have nests, foxes have holes, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. And like, so Jesus wants to. So when we have our churches and we do our discipleship, that's what it should look like. It's a very diverse group of people on every level. And then, yes, we raise them up and they make disciples and it all ties in, because it's like what you're saying. They're not looking for people who are compatible to them, but they're around people who relate to them. That's just naturally who you're around in life. And so we have diversity in the church, which reflects the kingdom of heaven, every nation, tribe, tongue, all that stuff, every socioeconomic level. We have that unified as one, as a body of Christ in the church. And, we can say in the four walls, but it's really just as a church body. We have that which just screams the glory of God. The fact that people from all these different areas can get along, not just get along, but they can love one another on an even and level playing field. So if I'm a very rich lawyer for an NBA or NFL team or a FIFA team, whatever, a multi-billion-dollar industry, but I can come to church and I can listen to a homeless guy preach the gospel, and I can take notes by that. That is a miracle when that happens. And so that's what church is supposed to look like. But then homeless guy, lawyer, trash man, unemployed guy, like, you know, all these people are now going to their spheres of influence, and they're influencing these for the kingdom of God. And so discipleship, you know, diversity and discipleship go big time hand in hand. But however, everybody is on mission in that sense. We're way off of the topic. Kind of. I mean, not answering the question. But,
okay, since we are.
But we're explaining like what discipleship is first.
Yeah.
And then.
You mentioned when you were making your list, you said trash guy, something, homeless man.
What do you guys say?
You mentioned
Sorry.
rubbish
Guy.
man.
Rubbish man?
Rubbish man.
Is that what you say?
Yeah. Garbage man. Rubbish man.
You say garbage man?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
we do say that. Oh, we say trash.
I know you didn't intentionally mean this, but you mentioned all men, and I think that.
Well, I'm just referring to the culture.
No, I know. I
Yeah,
said
yeah.
you didn't.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
didn't mean anything by excluding. You didn't exclude women, but I know how I feel about this. But how do you guys feel about maybe a very mature older woman discipling a younger man, like a teenage boy or someone in their 20s?
I'm not a fan of that.
Okay. What does the Bible say, though?
I don't know.
Okay. What do you think the Bible says about it?
I mean, I don't think the Bible's the issue. No. I think.
What's the biblical approach then?
Yeah, well, the biblical. Again, we have this system that is supposed to be a functioning body, and obviously women are involved. And it doesn't mean that men, like, I don't want to go to that extreme of men can't speak to women and women can't speak to men. That's not what I'm saying. But as far as like spending this intimate moments and time together, I just don't know if it's a wise idea.
Yeah, that would be my
It's not
stance on
wise.
it as well. Yeah, I wouldn't mix genders just because your discipleship, you're saying, is you need to look at it like it's a 24/7 role that you're playing. You know, you're invested in someone's life. You're there for that person in their best moments, but also in their worst moments. And I think crossing genders, you put up potential issues for the future. You put up things that might cause someone to stumble in the future, and I think that can be avoided by just not mixing genders. And
Even with such an age gap.
Yeah, but I mean,
absolutely.
It doesn't
because
matter.
let's say you've got a young guy or a teenage boy whose mum isn't present at home, and now all of a sudden he's being discipled by an older woman, and all of a sudden he sees, you know, more than a mum figure, like that woman, that nurturing woman that he's never had in his life. All of a sudden she represents that for him, and I think that, you know, that potentially risks up problems as well.
This weird like emotional attachment, which can obviously turn into something else. And I think,
But you don't think that can exist with a younger male who had an absent father, and now he's developed this unhealthy father figure mentality or relationship?
Well, no. That's not having as a father figure. It's not the issue. It's what you're saying is that develops into an emotional attachment that can turn into this. Because what he's saying is that a girl has, or what did you say? A boy can have mommy issues. He didn't have a mommy, and because that's not being confronted in a healthy way, that can turn into, and it happens on a very regular basis. He develops this attachment to somebody that's not his mom, but it's not just motherly. It turns into like
Attraction.
a romantic,
Okay.
Because he doesn't know how to process these cards that he's been dealt, and because he's not, and the woman may not understand him, like in that point of like how like. I don't know, maybe she does, but equally, like, let's avoid that, you know what I mean? And vice versa, males and women. I don't trust males along with females anyway, because I know how males are.
Yeah.
And so that's just, for me, so I'm more cautious to be like, well, females don't need, but, like, I'm super about, like, and I'm not saying you can't do anything. Like, if you ride out somebody on a motorcycle right now, like, I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? That's not the issue. But these, like, very intimate times alone and like, you know, excessive, like that's just dangerous. It's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
I was just playing devil's advocate because I agree. I agree. I've seen older women, even struggle with that issue. Like someone is finally valuing their opinion, and then they develop this unhealthy attachment to this teenage boy, I mean, I've seen it happen in youth groups and,
But equally, that's why discipleship and community is good too. Yes, you can have a person who is your go-to person, but there needs to be people, even between men and young boys and stuff. Like, because we've seen this recently you know, we have a friend who just came out and talked about some stuff that he went through as a teenager of a youth leader taking advantage of him. And it was just really betraying his trust. And like, it just is very, you know, it was presented as a discipleship relationship, and it was not that. Maybe it was, but it turned into something else. But
in that case, it was a same-sex discipleship relationship.
But you can't hold the 14-year-old responsible for that,
right?
At all, ever, in the history of anything. Like, you can't hold him that. And so it's the adult that is the responsible party for that. But when we don't have this intentional discipleship community or community discipleship, like, people like that see a hole to flourish in. You know what I mean? And people like that, because they are mature, they're never confronted with their sins. That's why I said in the beginning is understanding the discipleship never really, like, we're all being discipled. We all need to grow together. And you may not have someone that is right on your life discipling. I would say pursue that, but okay, if you don't, but understand that you are submitted to this community, and that's, you're a part of this church. And so this is, you know what I mean? That they are a part of your process. And so feeling like a superhero because you're able to give advice to this person is dangerous. And so keeping all this. Now, on the other side, you don't go and text the group chat of the church to all their issues and stuff. But definitely, like, there needs to be ways to include people into what's going on. It just protects everybody. You know what I mean? Just protects everybody. And yeah, spend one-on-one time. Like, because we can't cut off discipleship completely because, you know, some people struggle with homosexuality or pedophilia or, you know, whatever. But like, equally, we would just put in like safe things and wisdom in these things. So
I think one thing we think about, we automatically imagine when we talk about discipleship is one-on-one. Like, you can be discipled by integrating your families. Like, you are discipling a young man. He comes over and spends time with the family, or you go over and spend time with him and his family or his friends, or like, of course it does include that one-on-one time where you're able to be vulnerable and share your struggles and ask deep questions. But whenever it's only done secretly, I would say that's a red flag.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I think you can have like, not secret. You can have like private time, which is necessary because that's where confession happens. But yeah, when it's only done and everything serious is only done secretly and it's all hidden, there's a red flag there. And so those are the downfalls of discipleship. So I think, well, the question was, how do we do it, right?
Yeah, I was maybe like, as individually and even as a church, like, is there a plan for like how we plan to equip people to be disciple makers?
Yeah, so I'll say for our church first. I think, because that's my place, but I think for our church, we definitely want to get to a place where we're all about discipleship. But to be honest, we're not there yet. It's because we talked. This is what I preached on when I went to the States last time. It says, "Go and make disciples of all nations. You know, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, teaching them what I've taught you." But who is he talking to when he says that? He's talking to disciples, people who are already disciples and have been disciples, like legit disciples of him for 3 years. And so for us, I think we're in the process of pushing being disciples of Jesus at this point, you know. And we're not saying don't make disciples, but we're like, hey, like, let's follow the teachings of Jesus. For like, what did he teach, you know? And it's not about fully learning and having all that, but just having at least a foundation to be able to build on when you're going, and being able to, you know, just have a basic understanding of why you're even here. You know what I mean? And like, what does Jesus mean to you? And so I think now we are at the place of, because a lot of times that's a mistake we make in churches. All right, disciples. And people don't even follow Jesus themselves. And they don't know they don't follow Jesus themselves because they don't even know they've never been modeled or taught that or what it looks like or walked through that. And so now we just have like people that were never discipled trying to make disciples, and it's hard to do.
It's teaching heresy. False
unintentionally.
doctrine,
because you're teaching someone to be something. It's like me giving pilot. You want your pilot's license? Oh, come on, I'll teach you how to fly a plane. Dude, I've never flown a plane in my life. I've ridden in a plane a lot. That doesn't count. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's the same thing. And so, in our church right now, we're at that place where we want to. And that's why we're doing a whole series on community. It's like 12, 13-week series on community. It's called Us. And it's just about the community of God. And like, what does that look like? What does that mean? What are the expectations of this? And the whole point of this is so that we can love one another, because you can't disciple anybody until you love one another, because if they know us by our love, but we're not loving one another, then they won't know us. And if they don't know us, and we're supposed to be his ambassadors here, then they won't know him. And so that discipleship doesn't happen without this community and without us loving one another and having this. And so we're pushing that first. And on top of that, hopefully, we'll start to see more discipleship, an open community where people confess their sins one to another, where people have confidence in one another and are willing and are able and willing and even eager to confront our own sins and secret stuff and our traumas of the past and whatever. And so we're kind of like trying to cultivate that environment now so that it becomes the norm. And so when new people come in, and there have been new people coming in, that girl came back. I thought she wasn't going to come back. Oh, what's her name's friend?
Yeah.
Anyways, so we have the new people coming in. It can be the norm for them because those of us who have gone to church for years and years and years, and this hasn't been the norm, we're having to backtrack and relearn a bunch of things. But now we do that so that when new people come in, the process of discipleship can be automatic. You know what I mean? Not automatic, like in the sense of, we don't have to worry, but like that's the culture that we have. It's discipleship, confession, being open, and it's okay to talk about our weaknesses. It's okay to not be blessed and highly favored all the time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, let's confront that because you can't see, and that's what we talked about yesterday with Jesus. Jesus says he refers to himself as a doctor or whatever who needs a doctor, the sick or the well, and you don't go to the doctor until you accept the fact that something's off. Mm-hmm. And so just getting to that place to where people are okay and not embarrassed to say, oh, something's off. I need to confess this. I need to seek, help me, take me to the doctor. The men who took their friend to Jesus and lowered him through the roof, you know, like we want to be those types of friends. We want to be that type of congregation to where, we can't fix the problem, but we know who can. And so we take you, you're not too ashamed to say, oh, I'm crippled. And like, you know what? I've never seen you walk. I've known you for 20 years and I've never seen you walk. Oh, I just be tired. Like, no, that's, you know what I mean? Like, it's the same, that's the same thing. And it's like, I'm crippled. Like, we'll get to the point to where we can say that I'm crippled. And like, so I'm crippled, and do you want to walk? Yes, I want to walk, and maybe we'll pray with you and whatever. And it doesn't, but it didn't work, but we know who can heal you of that. And then we're not talking about even physical healing. We're obviously just the example of spiritual wholeness, and because that's really the goal. And so when we get to that, then I think we want to. And again, it's not really stages. There's a flow, and so but that's where we start. And the flow of that is to have what you referred to as natural discipleship, but the way it really should be is where we love Jesus so much, man. And we love each other so much because we love Jesus so much, and we understand the grace that we've been given, that obviously we don't deserve it, and so we extend that grace to everyone that comes through these doors, and we are patient, and we pursue people, and we love people, we forgive people. When we argue well, and we come back and we seek forgiveness, and then we stand together and we worship with one another, and we pray together. We want that to be where we live because that's when discipleship happens, you know. And so when we have that group of people that do that, which is possible, we've come to the place where we make it like, oh, that's just not realistic anymore. But it is realistic. Mm-hmm. We've been empowered to live this life with the Holy Spirit. Like that's who lives inside of us, and we've been empowered to live like this. And so when we live like this is the effects of that are multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-jobs. What is it called? You know what I'm talking about, but multi-tax bracket, like discipleship on every level of people seeing one another, inequality, not with pity and all this other stuff. And when you see people, if you are a multimillionaire heart surgeon that is the best in South America, but you see the guy who is between jobs and lives in a shack as equal, and you go to him for prayer and stuff, something breaks there. And so now he feels important, and not in himself, but in this community and who Jesus is, and he feels the love of God in that, and it produces results, and it opens things up, and it opens the relationship up to now where I can talk to you, I can confess to you, and vice versa. We count on one another, we lean on one another, and so that's the community we're supposed to live in. So and then discipleship happens there. And so when that transformation happens there, now you don't turn it off on Sunday at 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock when we end service. You are that person, and you're kind of recharged. And we don't build up to Sunday as the climax of the week. We launch out from Sunday. And so Sunday, and when that stuff happens, our small groups or whatever that we're going to do this year, all that stuff, when that happens, we launch back out into our own worlds, and we are seeking and building relationships and loving people, right? Loving even our enemies. We're loving people and all this other stuff. We are beacons of hope in every area that we live in. And we're looking for opportunities, definitely looking for opportunities to love people, connect people, share Jesus with these people. We're patient and we pursue people. And so discipleship happens there. And so there's some people who are healthy believers who go to their church and stuff, and they're discipled and stuff within their church groups or events or whatever, and just relationships, I should say, better church relationships. But then they go to their job and they're discipling people at their job, and the people at their job don't even know it yet. And so it's this process that starts. And so that's what, for me, that's what my hope for our church is. It's not secret or covert. It's overt, but it doesn't, I don't see the necessity for you to go to work and be like, hey, Bill, you've been cheating on your wife for 6 months. Let me disciple you. I mean, maybe. That's not invalid, but equally like, man, Bill, you're going through a rough time. Let's go. Hey, what are you doing for dinner? You come, and just starting to really build with Bill. And Bill, I mean, sharing the love of Jesus, but also the gospel of Jesus with Bill. Because the love of Jesus apart from the gospel of Jesus is not the love of Jesus. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so like doing both of those with Bill. Again, not force feeding him, but really demonstrating to him and explaining to him why we are the way we are. Explaining to him that there is hope for people like you who have messed up time and time and time again. You feel so far away from Jesus and it feels impossible that God will love and forgive someone like you, but he will. But, and so that's for me, that's what what I would like our discipleship in our church to look like. It's just a legitimate community of people who legitimately love Jesus and are intentional about loving people, not just so they'll come to church, but loving people because of who we are, not based off of who they are, but who we are and who Jesus is inside of us and who he's made us to be. Loving people based off of that and taking advantage of every opportunity to love them at a deeper level, an eternal level, and sharing with them the eternal hope that we have, And so for me, that's my hope for discipleship. And that's the way that I personally do discipleship, is I build relationships with people. And it's just we talk about sports, we talk about movies, we talk about whatever, but then we also, between us, we have conversations that are serious about Jesus too, and like just kind of check on each other and whatever. And like for me, that's what I feel like it should look like. And so I have some of these guys in the neighborhood, some of them I haven't seen forever, but like when we see each other, we'll have these conversations about, everybody wants to shoot the breeze at first, but then we get into deeper stuff. But then, we just have these, I'm not just confrontational over just things that I see that they do wrong or whatever. Like I'm, just want to be present and hopeful and gospel centered. And you know what I mean? That sturdy, what am I trying to say? That, like a dependable person, you know what I mean? Like when people feel hopeless, they can go to that person and talk to that person and seek advice. But equally, we seek and pursue them and like, hey, how you doing? Where you been? What's going on? Like what, because you've earned that. Because of your friendship, you've earned that position in their life. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so you have that equity built up in people. And that's the thing, too, is I think, like, evangelism is great, but it doesn't mean anything apart from discipleship and vice versa. They're hand in hand. And a lot of times we want to take one or the other, and it doesn't work like that. But evangelism without discipleship is simple because I just go on the street and I can just talk about Jesus, and then I can go. But I don't have to be really patient with people as they have a gazillion questions for a year. Well, what is Jesus? And they're even challenging. Well, it doesn't even make sense to me. And like, we don't have the patience for that. But that's what discipleship is being patient enough to build that relationship with these people to where, answering questions and responding and being able to really explain the faith, Like, yes, it's logical as well. It's definitely spiritual and beyond logic, but it's equally logical as well. It makes sense. Like, why do we need salvation? That can be easily explained, And so, just being present for everything that person needs and like really kind of holding their hand and walking them through the process of discipleship to conversion and then continuing the process of discipleship, Does that make sense? Yeah. Yep.
I was going to say, what's your opinion on, say you're discipling someone and they move church or they move city. Do you then have a responsibility to see them off onto someone else?
Phew.
Or do you keep that relationship going?
I mean, it would be both, right? But you go ahead.
Well, because we talk about discipleship as doing life with people. Because I think this is where sometimes missionaries might fall short. Is we do have a very strong focus on evangelism. Rightly so. We don't throw out evangelism just to do discipleship, like you were saying. We don't throw out discipleship just to do evangelism. But you see some missionaries, they don't even have home churches. And so it's like, okay, how can you truly disciple someone if you don't yourself have a home church, because now you might be, oh yeah, I'm discipling so-and-so, but your teaching might be different to the teaching he's receiving on a Sunday morning. Your viewpoint might be different. And so like, okay, that doesn't work.
No.
And so, yeah, like we talk about it doing life with someone. So let's take Joao, for example, in our church. Let's say we start discipling him now, and we work through him, we walk through him. He leaves for Santa Cruz next year to study. Obviously, that's a different situation because he's studying, so we want to be there for him. We want to support him. We want to continue walking through that with him. But we're not in Santa Cruz. We can't be doing the day-to-day life with him. So that we have then, would you say we then have the responsibility to helping him find the church? Or just like, where does that come? Did you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I do. Like,
responsibility.
I mean,
to pass him on?
If we can, if we can, I mean, and that's a great point. I don't even think it's a question. I think it's a point. Is that, like, I mean, if it's not always possible, right? And so at that point, again, let's go to 50 to 70 years ago, like that wasn't happening. It was gone. Like, we'll pray for you, and like, I mean, we just can't. I'll write you a letter, and you'll get it 3 months after I write it, and so you know what I mean. You're going through you might be married by the time I'm writing you about, you know what I mean, dating, and you know what I mean, like, it's so. But now we do have the capability to be able to do that stuff, and so definitely staying in touch with these people for sure. And kind of guiding them, because regardless of who they find or go where church they go to, they're gonna trust you because that's who they have the relationship with. Yeah. And so, I think always walk with them, but like definitely specifically, like in depth for a time of like them filling out new churches and stuff, and just making sure that we're active in his life, and that, hey, how'd it go? Hey, what is it? What was the? What did they have a website? You know what I mean? Like, definitely, like, because it is like kind of, it's not parenting, you know, because that seems insulting in a sense, but it is in a good way. You know what I mean? It's like you just want to make sure that their spiritual life is being taken care of and stuff, because that's something that we're gonna see probably a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of these guys they're gonna want to go to study in other places, and to be quite frank, a lot of them may not come back. If we can do the John Perkins stuff and get people to come back and stuff like that, that'd be great. But like, the reality on paper is that a lot of them may not come back. And so that's actually a great question, because it's not like, well, it's been good these past 3 years, have a good life. You know what I mean? But equally, like, super hesitant and protective about like, just, I heard this church was good. You know what I mean? Like, just sending them off to some random place. And like, well, we talk to him. But if they're a part of a church, they should be able to count on their pastor and stuff and talk to him. We should encourage that. So it's a great question, and I think a very touchy point that kind of goes, like, I really didn't answer your question, but
because I think like you're saying, I think it is definitely something that we're going to go through in the next few years, because we have teenage guys at our church who are approaching studying age, or university age. So they are going to leave, and they're going to go and they're going to study. I mean, all of a sudden you're going to have this, like, the empty nest syndrome, I guess, as a parent. You're going to be like, what are they up to? Who are they talking to? And you're going to have this, like, I want to control everything that he's doing. But equally, I'm not in Santa Cruz right now. So it's like, I need to be there for him. I need to be supporting them. But equally, you hope and pray that he's able to find someone in Santa Cruz who he can continue to do life with and walk with.
But I think it's even worth it to fly over there, or take a bus over, spend time with them, and visit churches with them if that's what, you know what I mean. Not it can be excessive, obviously, but like definitely having that. That's a great, and then but just kind of seeking, like, that's part of the discipleship process too, is seeing where the life is going. Like, okay, what are you thinking? Like, you want to study this, and then what? Do you want to stay here? Do you want to? And they won't know immediately, but you're just asking them to get them thinking about that. So that you can kind of see and help them along their walk and plan a little bit better going forward. You know what I mean? And so that's a great question, because we're going to be confronted with that pretty soon.
I have seen long distance, I guess, discipleship actually be beneficial. I'm not saying it should replace in-person, relationship, but I've seen you do it for years. When we left Bolivia, you were still discipling people over the WhatsApp or Facebook, and you wouldn't be. When I say discipleship, I don't mean like you're like opening up to the book of 1 Thessalonians. it's that people, like you said, you've invested in the person, and they
the
trust that you will lead them in a situation to Jesus, or you will have hope for them in this situation, or and they won't share with anyone around them. But it's like, that's not, one, it's, you're not to blame for that, you know, but two, you still do take on the responsibility that they came to me, as they usually do if I was in person, usually would have if I was there with them. And then even so now, like, you disciple people long distance via FaceTime. But I think that just depends on how vulnerable the person is with you. Like, are they really telling you their true life story right now? Or are they like hiding things from you and only presenting the good stuff, you know?
And that's the benefit of having gotten to know them and be around them for a long time. You know what I mean? And I think, I mean, and I think we should encourage them to be a part of, I mean, I know we should encourage them to be part of a church, but prayer is a big key in that too. And just really trusting that, you know, the Holy Spirit will convict them and direct them and guide them and lead them, and then, you know, that, and then also WhatsApp, like, send them messages, you know what I mean? Like, it goes both. And then just trusting the gospel, the gospel seeds that have been planted in their lives, you know, that they'll like grow and they'll bear fruit, like, you know, and they'll continue to bear fruit, and continue to follow Jesus. And we will check up and whatever. And then, like you said, it can become like secretive and whatever. But at that point, I mean, they're adults, and that's kind of on them. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, Judas did what he wanted at the end of the day. It's not Jesus' fault, you know? Like, Jesus did everything and then some that he could. At the end of the day, though, like, they make their decisions and stuff. So I think just being present on a biblical level, not just a physical level, is, you know, it goes a long, long way. But yeah, it starts now, right? Like, because if he leaves in like February, March, like, we've already been building a relationship with him, but it just really like can intensify that over these next few months. And even just be straight up with them about like, hey, we want to continue our relationship. When you go, we just want to be present for you and be able to pray with you and talk about different, like, you know, and I think just setting the tone for that, of being, you know, transparent in your intentions with them. I think it goes along, especially with kids like him, man. He's a good kid, you know, so I think with kids like him, it'll go a long way. And I think he'll be open and stuff, you know. But that's the importance, too, of creating this open community where it's not taboo to confess your sins one to another, you know, to where, like, that becomes the norm. So much so that when he goes to a church and doesn't see that happening, he's like, oh, yeah, I don't want to go here. You know what I mean? And so but it is tough. It is like the kids leaving the nest or whatever. And so you're kind of like, you know, looking like, hoping that they make the right decisions. This is probably what our parents think about all the time. You know what I mean? Like, and so
I do that now with one of the girls who is a teenager now. You know, we saw her grow from basically like a preteen to now a young lady, and it's just like, got my eyes on you, and now all the boys around you.
Every time she posts something, I don't play that stuff. We went to when you went to, I tell you about this? We went to the football game, and these boys were ogling over, and this dude came and like, I was sitting next to her. And then Ruth was sitting on the other side because we're watching you guys play or whatever, the church football game. And this guy comes sitting next to her and is all in her. And I turned around, he's sitting in the chair. I was like, and he's like, you want me to get up? I was like, yeah, get up. His eyes got all big and whatever. And then he's like leaning over, like touching her hair and stuff, like he's standing behind her. And I just like stared him down. Like, bro, if you don't, I told her, I was like, I was this close. Like, and she's laughing because like, no, we're not playing that stuff. Like, not because it's a boy, but because his approach was wrong. Like, you know, we can't say don't talk to boys. Like, that's absurd. But like his approach was wrong, and it just reeked of wrong motives, you know.
But equally, her not saying anything shows that there's a space right there to a teachable moment. Like, you can set boundaries.
But that's what society tells, and that's again the importance of discipleship, is because society is telling them that getting attention from boys is good, like in that way, even if it's an unhealthy way. Getting this attention from boys. That's why we have all these little young pregnant girls running around, you know, and stuff like that. Girls with babies now and stuff running around is like in our community is because of that. Is like they've been taught by society that attention from boys is the goal, and like looking cute and pretty and flirty and all that is and like nah, you're made for more, you know. And so like let's, you know, pursue that in that way. And that's why it's important to spend time with these kids and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And to not just to beat them down, but like to really like, you know, kind of earn their trust and to be able to have real conversations with them on a deep level, and so they can understand why stuff works too. You know, they don't understand like a lot of like why we do, why you don't flirt, why it's not. You know, they don't understand that stuff because no one's ever explained it to them. You know, so yeah. Man, you guys are the worst at ending it. Like, literally just go silent out of nowhere. Like, you just said something and then, like, boom, it's gone. You just asked something and then, questions answered. I guess it's over.
I think that this was a good topic because as a ministry, that is part of our mission. That is our mission, to make disciples and bring restoration to the broken. It's like, you don't just walk up to someone, lay your hands on their forehead, and boom, they're restored, but they once were broken. Like, that is all part of a discipleship process. And maybe people had questions like, well, what does that even look like? Oh, it sounds cute, but I don't know that they're really doing what they say they're doing. Yeah. It's like realizing that it is a long, lifelong process. Not something you see very quick results.
It is. It is. Yeah, but that's who we are as believers, that's who we're supposed to be. And that's literally how we build his kingdom. We don't, praise and worship is good, but that's not how we build his kingdom. Yeah. That's not, it's just not like, and all that stuff. Like, going to church is great and necessary, but that's not, just going to church is not how, that's not, you know what I mean? And so. And
I think also somewhere along the way we've made like Christianity our personal relationship with the Lord, and it's like, as long as me and God face to face, prayer time, alone time, secret closet, secret room, everything is so me and God. It's been distorted because who's discipling you? Who are you discipling if it's just you and God? So.
We've made it private, right? Our relationship with God, it's personal. Our relationship with God is personal, but it's not private, and we've made it private. And so that means, you're not, you guys don't need to know. It's between me and God and whatever.
I was even taught as a kid, like, to avoid debate, don't talk about politics or religion. And it's like, how are you a Christian and you're never going to talk about your faith? Because I want to live in peace with people, no debates, no arguing, no tension.
That doesn't make sense to me because, like, this is the place where we're supposed to be able to discuss everything, especially from a biblical perspective. So what you're saying is there's some things in life I just can't talk about at church. Like, what? So what you're saying is I can talk about it with my unsafe friends, but not with my church friends. Like, that's backwards. I think we should be able to talk about everything in church. And that's what we talk about in our church. Like, that's the way our approach to stuff is. We feel like we should be able to talk about everything. And so, we approach that. So, we talk about politics. We don't support candidates and stuff, but we talk about politics in church. It's literally everything. What is it that we can't talk? Why is there all things that are off? It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Like, golden calf, much maybe. Untouchable. I don't know. But there should be nothing that within this community that we can't talk about. So anyway, go ahead.
No, I was just saying so I didn't sound like I just went mute on you.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm used to it at this point. That's why I said so. Anyways,
using my good old fillers.
Yeah. Well, thank you much for listening. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. No, thanks for listening. Have fun on this election day, and you know who won at this point. But your hope is in Jesus, and don't let go of that. Go into all the nations and make disciples, or go into all the world and make disciples of all nations. So we hope you enjoy. Have a great week. Provecho.